All right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the CV Update. As promised yesterday, we are back again with an episode dedicated towards the 2021 NFL Draft, which begins this Thursday, April 29th. We will not be discussing the Celtics' absolutely disgusting loss to the Charlotte Hornets, or the Bruins' loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins, or the Red Sox win over the Seattle Mariners. That's for our usual episode next weekend. Today is strictly going to be a football-focused show, as we'll look into some of the many college players who have been linked to the Patriots in recent time. Joining me, as usual, is my co-host, Rohan Venkatesh. Rohan, how are you doing today?
Another week, another show, another special edition. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Additionally, as we teased yesterday, since this is a special episode, we have brought alongside with us a very special guest in Pratik Sinha. Pratik joined us to recap Super Bowl 55 and is a diehard fan of the New England Patriots. Pratik, how have you been doing, and welcome back to the CV Update.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I'm a big fan. I try to listen weekly, and I'm glad to be here. I'm doing well. Looking forward to the draft. I think there's going to be some real superstar talent here, so we are definitely excited to see what unfolds.
Totally agree. And before we go into the discussion, guys, I just wanted to quickly mention one thing. I just wanted to go over the Patriots draft picks for this 2021 draft starting next Thursday, April 29th. So obviously in round one, they just have the 15th overall pick. Round two, they have the 46th overall pick, one pick in the second round. Third round, just one pick, the 96th overall pick. Round four, they actually have three draft picks, 120, 122, and 139. Round five, they have one draft pick, 177. Round six, they have two, 188 and 197. And then round seven, they have 242. So they have a total of 10 draft picks for this 2020 draft before a trade is done. So anyways, let's start with the most important position, guys. Rohan, can you give us some insight on the quarterback? Like, who do you think the Patriots should target at the quarterback position? Because please do not tell me that Cam Newton is the starter for 2021.
I didn't want Cam Newton to be the starter for 2021, but given what the Patriots did a few weeks ago, going on those series of blockbuster trades and building that offense around him, it seems like we're pretty much stuck with that. And so I fear that the Patriots QB position isn't really going to change anytime soon. The only saving grace is if Cam has a good year. I'm not going to hold my breath for that, but we'll have to see about that. I mean, given that, I highly doubt that Patriots are going to go for a QB in the first. Maybe they might go for one in the second round or the third round. But anyway, even in the first round, they got the 15th round pick. So all the good QBs are going to be gone by then.
Are you sure about that though? Because I mean, do you really think like all five of those top, Trey? I mean, obviously Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, they're not even in the question here. They're going to be taken by the Jaguars and the Jets.
Yeah, but
like Trey Lance, Mac Jones,
Justin Fields, Mac Jones. They're. I would have said that they would have gone to the 3 to 5 slots in the draft, and like given the way it's going, I mean, like one of those teams is the Niners. And then I looked and I said, wait a minute, the Niners are probably not gonna go to QB because they probably want to hold on to Jimmy G.
They kind of have to. They traded up to get that number 3 pick. They're going to take a quarterback because why else do
I can't help but think so it's probably going to be the Bengals and the Dolphins who are going to vie for those players. Barring any sort of situation.
Cincinnati, but Cincinnati already has Joe Burrow. Would they really want to get another quarterback?
Why not? Hey, like if you're that high up in the draft, why not? It's the best. It's the best likelihood of
that really is a hot take.
Win total. It's this. But I mean, look. I mean, it's a high risk play, but given where Cincinnati kind of is right now, they don't really have much to lose.
Interesting. Pratik, what do you think?
So, I would say the quarterback position, to answer your first question, I mean, it does seem like Cam Newton is trending towards being the week 1 starter, barring a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, who we'll probably be discussing soon. But basically, right now, Cam Newton is the best quarterback on the roster. And I do believe the Patriots should approach this draft looking to get their quarterback of the future future could mean that they're starting by week 10 this year if Cam Newton once again is underperforming. Or future could mean they sit for a year, sit for 2 years, and then eventually the reins will be handed to them.
Sit for 2 years, just quickly to just go off on that. If you're saying sit for 2 years, that means Cam Newton.
You think they'll be that patient
again?
You think
Well,
that they'll just sit there for 2 years as the backup and just...
I look at Aaron Rodgers. He sat behind Brett Favre for 3 years. People expected Brett Favre to retire. He was old, washed up, throwing a bunch of interceptions. But he randomly had a good year in 2007, and he took the Packers to the NFC title game. And, Aaron Rodgers had to wait for his turn, and it actually helped him. He learned the system in 3 years, and now he's a superstar quarterback.
That's an alternative take.
And Aaron Rodgers was picked in the 20s. I don't know the exact position, but he was picked somewhere in the
23.
20s.
Yeah, I believe it was 23.
The Patriots have the 15th pick. So they're not going to get one of the absolute superstars in the draft, like a Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. Maybe there's a chance someone like Justin Fields drops to 15. But if not, I would be totally comfortable. I'd be totally comfortable with the Patriots kind of drafting a developmental guy who can sit and learn. Important thing is he's got to have the physical tools. He needs to be able to throw the ball deep. He needs to be fairly mobile in today's NFL. But I'm thinking that Cam Newton is probably going to start week 1, for better or for worse.
I mean, your approach sounds great if it works out, but if we draft a QB and they have to sit for a year or two, that's a lot of time for them to sit around and potentially be doing nothing.
Patrick Mahomes sat for 1 year behind Alex Smith.
But what's to say that they're not going to find a way to bolt in the meantime?
Well, I don't think you can really bolt when you're like a rookie, when you just joined the team. You can't really do that.
When Jimmy Garoppolo was drafted in 2014.
But other teams are going to aggressively pursue that QB, whoever it is. Oh, okay, but in that scenario, at least the Patriots would get something in return for giving up that.
Garoppolo sat behind Brady for 3 years, and then in his 4th year, they finally traded him because it was clear that Tom Brady wasn't going to go anywhere at the time. So I mean, there is a precedent, and I think that's ideal. You don't want to throw someone into the fire week 1. Like, even like the Cincinnati Bengals, who you mentioned, last year they drafted Joe Burrow, who was a really good prospect, but they had nothing around him. He had no protection, and he was injured midway through the season because he had no offensive line. Like, yeah, you have a really good quarterback. You put him out there. You just leave him out there, and the defense is just like, they essentially broke him. So, like, I don't want to see that happen. I think the Patriots have a good approach. They're getting the pieces around the guy. And then once you plug in the guy, you just hope that he can deliver.
Oh, I agree. I like that. No, I like your take here. And I think definitely, like, I don't know, I just want to kind of list like a couple of these guys. Like, I mean, again, I'm not mentioning Lawrence or Wilson because they're going to be gone. And one of Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and or Justin Fields, one of those three is going to be taken by the San Francisco 49ers. That's why they traded up to get to the number 3 pick. So my question is, among these 5 guys, like Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Justin Fields, and then I'm including Kyle Trask and Kellen Mond, among those 5, like, who do you want the most and who do you want the least? Like, we don't have to go into a full ranking. I just want to say, like, who do you want the most out of those 5, and who, like, are you like kind of the less interested in, like the least interested in among those 5? Pratik, let's start with you.
So in personal preference, I guess, out of the guys you listed, I would want Mac Jones because Mac Jones is a guy with a high floor and a low ceiling. Trey Lance is the opposite. Trey Lance has a high ceiling. He can be an absolute stud because he can run, he can throw it really deep. He could be the next Patrick Mahomes, or he could be the next Jordan Love, who didn't even see the field because he didn't show anything to deserve it. So, I mean, Mac Jones, he is smart. He has a good NFL mind. He's a great leader. Alabama did not lose a game last year with him. They won most of their games by huge margins. I know he had a very talented roster around him in Alabama, but he's going to have a good amount of talent in New England too if he ends up in New England, I think.
And Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator, who's a great mind.
He's going to have Hunter Henry. He's going to have Nelson Aguilar. He will not have Julian Edelman, unfortunately, but he'll have good running backs he can hand the ball off to. So Mac Jones, he knows to make the right play. He's had great coaching his whole career, and he'll continue to have great coaching. And he's shown that he can win on the biggest stage and isn't fazed by the moment. So that would be the guy that I would really want to see if he's available. However, it seems like other teams have caught on to this as well, and he probably won't be around at 15.
Yeah, the thing with Mac Jones,
I would have to agree with that because like I would definitely have to go with Mac Jones as well because like as Pratik said, like he was with Alabama and they didn't lose the game. But in addition to that, in addition to that, like with Trey Lance, you get like North Dakota State and then of course Justin Fields, Ohio State. I would probably put Justin Fields as my number 2 pick among those 3 because Ohio State they went to the college championship. Of course they lost, but having that big game experience is going to be valuable, especially when you get to the NFL. You have to come up in clutch situations. But I mean, they're all great. The fundamentals are all great for all 3 of the players. I see that Pratik kind of is potentially staying away from Trey Lance because of his analysis that he's a high volatility pick.
I mean, he's boom or bust. Like either he'll boom or he'll bust. And at this point, the Patriots can't afford a bust. They're in win now mode. Belichick has something to prove.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'll just go on and say about Mac Jones, like Charlie Weiss, former offensive coordinator for the Patriots for the early 3 Super Bowls they won from 01 to 04. Charlie Weiss. And then he drew a very interesting comparison. He drew a comparison to from Mac Jones to Tom Brady. So obviously, anytime someone does that, you have to take it with a grain of salt because Brady is the GOAT. But I guess like the reason people draw that comparison is because Mac Jones is like not very like considered as athletic. Like he's a pocket passer. He doesn't have a great arm, and he's not really known to make plays with his feet, just like Brady. But at the same time, if you are to draw comparisons to Brady, then that would indicate that he has a very high football IQ. He has the intangibles. He's not fazed by the moment, as you had mentioned, Pratik. So I do think that's there. Like obviously Brady's not fazed by all the Super Bowls he's played in 10 total. So I do like Mac Jones, and he's also my number 1 pick. But also like my number 2 pick, I just want to quickly bring this. I know I didn't ask you this, but what do you think of Kellen Mond, the guy from Texas A&M? The reason he kind of intrigues me, and we'll go into this a little bit later, but the thing with Kellen Mond is he's actually projected to be like a day 2 draft pick, so like a second round or maybe like I think second round. So what if the Patriots do something like this, like round 1, they take a guy like Micah Parsons, Penn State, linebacker, defense, make the defense very strong, and then you draft a guy like Mond in round 2, and that's kind of the guy he's sort of a project. Like if you read up the scouting report, they say like he has tight windows, but his accuracy isn't very good. But those are things I think you can coach up. So do you like Kellen Mond as like a potential like day 2 draft pick, and your first round you actually spend it on like a defensive player or like someone else?
I like the idea of taking a quarterback day 2 because if they do their research, which I believe the Patriots do, they generally scout pretty well. Kellen Mond, he played in an extremely tough conference. He played in the SEC for Texas A&M, so he had to face great defenses week in and week out. And yeah, like unlike Mac Jones, he did not win every game, but he absolutely he's got the tools based on the scouting report. He also seems like he's a mobile quarterback, which is good because plays that are drawn up for Cam Newton could also be executed potentially by Kellen Mond. So I think he would be a good fit. And I would say if a guy like a Mac Jones is not available at 15, which is a real possibility, I don't think it's a bad idea for the Patriots to get a defensive player or meet another positional need. Because with quarterbacks, there's always the big names. But if you look at the last few years, there's also usually a couple guys like in the 3rd or 4th round, like Russell Wilson. He was in the 3rd round. It's like sometimes if teams do their homework, they can get somebody late, and that somebody can become a star. I'm not saying everybody's going to be a Tom Brady round pick,
but Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott 4th round draft picks who are starters in this league. So yeah, no, I totally agree. So I guess this is, and Rohan, what do you think? Do you think do you address defense round 1 if you don't have the guy you want in round 1? If you think you can get the guy in round 2, do you take a defensive player? It doesn't have to be Parsons. It could be like a safety or cornerback. Like what are your thoughts on that?
I would have to go with the corner because like just instinctively I get the feeling that the Pats are better at defending on the ground than they are in the air. I could be wrong about that, but just from observing them, that's kind of what I've seen.
I feel like their secondary, at least it's interesting you mentioned, because their secondary 2019 was like really the strength. Like the number 1 defense was really that. So their
defense is okay. I mean, it may not be the best, but I mean,
2019 it was number 1 ranked though.
So yeah. So that's dropped off. But of course, I mean, the rebuild isn't going to happen in 1 year. It's probably going to take a few years. And so the quickest way back to the top would be to stack your offense. of course, you need defense, but it's not like our defense is terrible. It's decent enough for now.
The defense kept them in a lot of games last season, like a lot of games that could have gotten away from them because the offense was underperforming. Yeah, so I mean, getting a good defense is absolutely essential. And if there's somebody available in the first round, you just want to take the best player on the board because the best players will be gone by day 2. So you just gotta.
Yeah, like the only time where you would see situations where it screams like, oh man, we need a better defense is if you build up a huge lead and then your defense just allows a collapse late in the game. Like that kind of stuff didn't really happen with the Pats much, or if at all, last year. Most of the times when the Pats lost, it was because they were never really in it from the beginning.
All right, I love how you actually just mentioned that analogy because my next question, I feel it's a very appropriate transition to my next question. So how do you feel if the Patriots trade up to the number 4 pick, get currently owned by the Atlanta Falcons? And I just think it's funny that you mentioned having a big lead and then having the defense blow it because we remember what happened in Super Bowl 51. But how do you guys feel if they do trade up to get the number 4 pick, like owned by the Atlanta Falcons? And the reason I mentioned this is because Atlanta's actually in a very interesting position because they have Matt Ryan as their quarterback still. And I just get the feeling that they're still like, I don't think they're going to take a quarterback that high. They're probably more interested in like a player, like a tight end, like Kyle Pitts to complement Matt Ryan. Because that way you have like a really good tight end for Ryan to throw to. And you have Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. You have a good offense in Atlanta still. It's just going to come down to Matt Ryan and giving him enough weapons. So I think Atlanta, if anything, they're a team that could trade down instead of being 4, they could go to 15. So would you be okay if the Patriots actually traded up and got the number 4 pick and then basically were able to get like a top quarterback?
It depends on what the Patriots have to give up for it, because it sounds like the Falcons would be asking for a lot if they were to do something like that. And so who would they ask for in return?
So it would be the 15th pick, but then it probably, usually if you look at some of the precedent for this, it's usually like 2nd round draft picks from a couple, like the next couple years essentially. And then like, I don't know, like an interesting proposal, I was listening to Zolak and Bertrand, and they mentioned a very interesting proposal, Stephon Gilmore. That'd be someone interesting if the Patriots were decide to move on from Gilmore, because he is kind of unhappy with his contract situation. What if you sent a deal with the 15th overall pick, Gilmore, and then like, I don't know, 2nd round picks in 2022 and 2023? Would you take that? Like, would you do that trade if you're the Patriots to get up to number 4?
I'm actually not so sure about that. Look, if Falcons aren't asking for a lot, then sure, why not, right? You get another pick, right? Especially when the Patriots need to rebuild right now. Yeah, it sounds like a good trade to make. If you don't have to blow a hole through your current roster, yeah, it's not a bad trade.
But Pratik, what are your thoughts?
I actually have a question. Do these trades happen on draft day or do they generally happen before?
It depends. Sometimes they are draft day trades, but other times it can be before too. So I think it's a mix of both, honestly. It really depends. Usually.
So it's actually so you can even get situations where it's like a live auction essentially.
Kind of. Well, usually sometimes these GMs like of teams, they're literally on the phones on draft day talking to other teams about like trading their picks and stuff like that. Like there's movement like throughout. That's why you'll see all of a sudden, like if you ever watch the draft, they'll say, oh yeah, this pick, this team was supposed to take it, but they actually traded it. And that literally happened at that time. This didn't happen like beforehand, like the day before. It happened during that time, like literally probably minutes before sometimes these trades get finalized and stuff like that before the player is taken. So yeah, there are draft day trades themselves. Like, I don't know. So like, I'm curious to see what they do at this spot. Like I would personally, like, I think the number 4 pick is, I don't know, like it really depends on like sort of the situation. Cause like you look at some of the teams that are ahead of the Patriots in terms of drafting, like Carolina, they got Sam Darnold, they're at the 8th pick. And they're also interested in moving down because they don't really need a quarterback anymore. So maybe what would it take instead of going to 4, what would it take to go to 8 and trade with Carolina instead? And like that's what I'm sort of really looking for. Like you have to really look at the teams that are kind of ahead of you and whether or not they like need a quarterback. Like the Giants are at 11, I believe. They have Daniel Jones. I don't think they're going to go for a quarterback either. Cincinnati, like you mentioned, they're not going to go for a quarterback this year because they have Joe Burrow. They want to build around him. So those are the types of teams that I'm kind of interested in. Oh, I think they're number 4 because number 3 is San Francisco. So number 5, I guess, is Cincinnati. But anyways, like, so that's like my take on this. So yeah, I don't know. So I guess we'll have to see. But do you think, Pratik, that like, would you do that trade if
I would want to see who's available at 4 because the draft, we know 1 and 2 is pretty obvious, Lawrence and Wilson, but depending on what the Niners do at 3, there could really be a great prospect available at 4. But I'm with Rohan. I'm kind of hesitant to give up too many assets at this point. And actually, I like potentially trading with Carolina at 8 because Denver at 9 may very well take a quarterback because Denver is not really happy with Drew Lock right now. He's kind of underperformed. So if they do trade, probably going up to 4 would require a lot. Going up to 8 could be realistic. Or I would say really standing pat at 15. No pun intended, but really just, yeah, I don't think trading is really worth it, especially if it's not going to be a guy that's going to start week 1. Like, if you know you're going to have your starting quarterback, like for sure at 4, I'd say go for it. But I think Belichick would probably have some type of competition in training camp between Newton and even if he gets like a Mac Jones or a Trey Lance, like he's not just going to say like, you are the starter right away. Here's the keys to the kingdom. So I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I guess my next question then is, besides Brady, Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo, Jalen Hurts, Andy Dalton, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, for the time being in DC, every other starting quarterback or projected starting quarterback is actually like a first-round draft pick. So that said, like, no, I mean, obviously that's like a 4, 5, 6, 8 quarterbacks who are like round 2 later.
It's like a fourth of the league.
Yeah, basically a fourth of the league. Like, do you feel so? Basically, think about it like this then: 75% of the quarterbacks are first-round draft picks who start in this league. So knowing that statistic, like this is a clear statistic, do you feel good if the Patriots take someone round 2 or later? Like knowing this like information, or do you still think like a guy like Mond is worth taking a flyer on in round 2 and not taking a quarterback round 1?
They got to get some sort of QB because they're taking this big gamble on Cam. And if he turns out to be a bust this year like he was last year, then that's the major risk that they're taking. So at the very least, just to hedge against a bad season by Cam, we're gonna have to go for a QB, and if not the second round, definitely by the third round.
I mean, probably the reverse is also true. There have been a lot of QBs taken in the first round that either were busts or never really got to play at all. So again, I'm looking at Jordan Love. Also Dwayne Haskins.
What about Christian Ponder, like, or some of those guys like Jake Locker, Christian Ponder,
Josh Rosen,
Blaine Gabbert, all these guys like sort of taken in the first.
Well, at least Gabbert got a couple years as starter before the Jags moved on. But yeah, like a guy like Josh Rosen, he hasn't even played a full season's worth of games, and he's already on his like 3rd or 4th team now. So like, I mean, I think it's important to be smart and not just like kind of rush to get a first round QB for the sake of getting a first round QB. I believe the Patriots would do their research, and maybe, yeah, I'm totally fine with the 2nd or 3rd rounder. Garoppolo was a 2nd rounder, and like, yeah, I mean, he did well in his limited appearances with the Patriots, and he did go to a Super Bowl with San Francisco. So I don't think round 1 is a requirement, but yeah, I would be concerned if the Patriots don't pick a quarterback by the last day of the draft, because that just means that like they're so invested in Cam that it's almost delusional in a way. It's like, yeah. But
by last day, just going off that point, if you're saying last day, so you'd be okay if they take someone in like the 6th round or 5th round, like you think that would be okay?
There's a couple developmental sleepers that like I think they could be good. They both lost their starting jobs in college due to injury, and they had to transfer. One of these guys is Felipe Franks. He was the quarterback in Florida, and then he transferred because he was beaten out by Kyle Trask after he was injured. So like a lot of these guys, their stock has fallen because they're starting to get that injury prone label. But like, you know, injury prone, there's guys in the NFL who get injured, like Joe Burrow got injured last year. Does that mean people are giving up on Joe Burrow? Like, I think kind of depending on the nature of an injury, they're sleepers. But the thing with a sleeper is they're not going to start round 1. They need a training camp. They need to sit behind somebody and learn. But really, like, yeah, I mean, Felipe Franks, he transferred to Arkansas after that, which is also SEC, which is also very tough competition. Like, I'm not saying that's the ideal route for the Patriots, but it is an option. And Belichick, they scout. They'd found Brady after all, 21 years ago. So, you know, I would be confident if they take anyone. Also Sam Ellinger from Texas.
Oh, but the thing with Ellinger, like I read a scouting report, like apparently he's projected to be more like a career backup. That's like what kind of worries me about Ellinger.
Yeah, no, that's always the risk. Like, because the thing with college is you never know how it's going to translate to the NFL. Like, that's why there's hesitancy about small school guys too, like Trey Lance and even Zach Wilson. Like BYU didn't really play anyone particularly good. Like they like his mechanics and things like that, like kind of the intangibles, so to say.
Yeah.
But I think like like a lot of these guys, like everybody who's in the draft, they're there for a reason. And like sometimes the differences are very minute. Was Ryan Fitzpatrick undrafted or was he a
No, I
seventh?
think he was a 7th round draft pick.
Yeah.
I believe so.
I mean, Tony Romo had a nice long career. He was
He was
undrafted.
undrafted. Yeah, Eastern Illinois actually. Same place as Jimmy G.
Exactly. So a lot of times, like I think if teams do their research, and the Patriots, they are a functional franchise. They're not like a Jacksonville or what Cleveland used to be. Like basically, like they're eventually going to hit on somebody. I don't know what's going on with Stidham because Stidham, he was a 4th rounder.
Yep, 4th
Yeah, he was a 4th rounder. He's still on the roster, but I thought at the end of last season he should have been starting when they were eliminated from playoff contention. After
yeah, that's kind of almost like an alarming sign though. Like the fact that like at the end they still went with Cam, like even when they were eliminated, like that 38-9 ugly, horrible Monday night loss to Buffalo. Like Stidham just came at the end, right? Like Cam basically just took the brunt of that. And like, there was such an interesting article I was reading that this is just a theory. I think it's from weei.com, but they were mentioning that apparently one possibility is that Belichick wanted to protect Stidham from like last year, so he had Cam basically take the beating, and this was his way of like protecting Stidham. I don't buy that because I don't
protect him from what? Like from just looking bad on TV?
How would that be protecting him?
Oh, probably just
by
like
not playing him.
Yeah, but I guess it was just sort of like, I don't know, like you put Stidham out there with the horrible receivers and like the horrible supporting cast he had on offense. And as a result of that, like you look really bad. And that shakes like young guys' confidence. So like, I don't know. That's like one theory. I don't really buy that, honestly. I think it was more to it.
Isn't it more damaging to sit on the sideline? I would argue that that's more damaging.
Yeah, no, so that's the thing. That was an article, and that was just like one theory. I'm just trying to see sometimes like what Belichick is thinking on these fronts. So like it's hard to really gauge that. But there is another Pratik. Like
that just seems like a weird hypothesis with close to no evidence. I'm not going to even take that seriously.
But Pratik, there's one thing, but yeah, no, you're right. But going back to like the quarterback, like, so you mentioned a guy like Ellinger or Felipe Franks, right? What if like, there's a theory I've heard, which is kind of interesting. What if they take 2 quarterbacks in this draft, like one kind of early and one late? Like Washington did that in 2012, actually. RG3 first round, then they took Kirk Cousins 4th round, and Cousins actually ended up becoming the starter. Like, do you think like maybe that's like actually, I would actually be okay with that approach where you take like, I don't know, you take out Mond in round 2, and then you take Franks or Ellinger in round 6. Do you think that's like something would you endorse that?
That is interesting, but in that case, they would have 4 quarterbacks on the roster after the draft. Not to mention Jake Dolagala, who's on the practice squad. I don't even know if I said that right, but we've got a lot of quarterbacks in there, and someone is going to have to be out. Like, yeah, I'm kind of skeptical of that because I think the draft is too important. You need to meet different positional needs. Washington got really lucky by doing that because RG3 turned out to be injury prone, and then Cousins kind of stepped in and he was good for a few years. But yeah, I wouldn't endorse that strategy. I would think zone in on 1 or 2 quarterbacks. If they're available, take them in the round where they should be taken.
Yeah,
then get a receiver, get a receiver, get a cornerback, get a linebacker. Really just
That's a nice transition to the next question I actually had for you guys. So outside of quarterback, if they decide not to go with the QB round 1, and if you choose to go with defense, or I can add offense as well, what position should the Patriots kind of look at to improve on if they decide not to go with the QB round 1? Because I don't know, like wide receiver, you mentioned.
I think that's the likely scenario.
Yeah, there are some very intriguing wide receivers available. There's Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle from University of Alabama, Jamar Chase from LSU, and I don't know. Like, do you think like either of these guys kind of intrigue you enough to take round 1 if they flip to you? The thing with all of these guys, interestingly enough, when you read their scouting report, all of them pretty much have like the same, like they're capable of making big plays. The real cons with these guys though are that basically they're kind of undersized. But I don't really care about that. Like you've seen guys like Antonio Brown, like undersized 5'10", and he became a
being
superstar.
Undersized. Yeah, that's not a bad thing though. I mean
that's like
give them more agility.
Yeah, but that was like the one con. So that's why I really kind of looked at all three of these guys.
But is it a con?
Like
I don't even know if
stars.
I don't even know if that's a con at all.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue. And I would say if any of them fall to 15, I doubt that they would. I'm seeing that kind of Waddle and Smith, they're kind of like interchangeable because they're both Alabama guys. Smith won the Heisman, but Waddle had like some really strong individual performances. Like I would absolutely take any one of them if they became available at 15 and like the quarterback was not. Um, but that's a big positional need because they made some nice moves in the offseason. They brought in Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar. Aguilar has had a problem with drops. I think that annoyed a lot of Eagles fans. They had the thing where they're throwing babies out of buildings and people are catching them, unlike Aguilar. So, like, I mean, so basically, I think, yeah, wide receiver is a huge need. And then, of course, on the defense, like you said. So it's
Like
not
Parsons, do you take Parsons at 15 if he falls to you? Or like, I mean, I'm listing like some of these guys who are like round one. So at a cornerback, there's a Patrick Surtain the second out of University of Alabama, J.C. Horn. These are cornerbacks. Inside linebacker, there's a Micah Parsons and Zaven Collins. Those are round one projected draft picks. Trayvon Moehrig from TCU at free safety. And see, safety is another interesting position. The reason I mentioned that is because McCourty is getting pretty old. And then you have those three I mentioned at wide receiver. So I don't know, like, I think linebackers, because I don't know, like, I always feel like adding a pass rusher, the pass rush has been so like bad for them, like at least
absolutely.
So I'd say go for Parsons if he's available, or Collins.
Yeah, we saw it last year. The Washington football team drafted Chase Young, number 2 overall. Now the Patriots, they have a later pick, so Parsons is likely gone. But that is just going to change the whole outlook of a defense. Like just adding one guy like that. I know it's a team sport, but bringing in a prospect like that who can be a leader from day one and he's going to fit right in. The Patriots, they've had a pretty good defense. Like last season, they did have a few games where they gave up a lot of points. But in general, like good coaching. Matt Patricia's back. Matt Patricia is gonna
For better or for worse. I don't know if that's like a good
okay, thing. He was not a great head coach, but he was a good defensive coordinator for the most part.
Aside from 52, right? Super Bowl 52.
Yeah.
Homage to our RPI Aerospace right there.
Yeah, he was not perfect, but I mean, yeah, I think a guy like Micah Parsons would be a great fit. J.C. Horn, cornerback. Asante Samuel Jr. is there. I don't know if he's a first-round talent.
Yeah, I think he's the second-round draft pick. I mean, he's pretty. I mean, obviously the Patriot connection. His dad was a Patriot star, won 2 Super Bowls. So yeah, I'd take Asante Samuel Jr. if he falls. Like I think he's a round 2 draft pick. So yeah, I mean, I think cornerback's another interesting area just because Gilmore.
Wow, Asante Samuel Jr. I remember Asante Samuel Sr.
Yeah, exactly.
Old, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, but it's interesting because like I think at cornerback, like Gilmore's kind of like he's 30, he's gonna be 31 at the start of the season. So Gilmore's kind of getting old. You have a JC Jackson who's like a budding like Pro Bowl.
He's a stud.
Yeah. But like, so I don't know, like, do you draft a guy like Surtain or Horn, or maybe Asante round 2? There's some other guys, Greg Newsom the second, if you want to go, and then there's some other guys. So like quarterback, I'm not as worried about because I feel their secondary is still a strength. The safety position is kind of a little bit more of a, I'd say that's kind of an area I'd like to see them improve on more. Like Kyle Duggar is pretty good, but like, I mean, McCourty is like 33, or he's going to be 34. I think McCourty might be 34 soon. So McCourty's getting old. And really, if you get a guy like a Trayvon Moehrig out of TCU or Javon Holland out of Oregon, someone who's young, kind of can learn under McCourty. I think McCourty's a terrific mentor. So if you could get one of those guys, like I'd be okay with that too for round 1. But like, yeah. I don't know. But as you said, like, I don't want them to take a quarterback for the sake of taking a quarterback. Because if you see the list of these guys, sometimes there's a lot of those. You mentioned it, Pratik. There's a lot of busts in the like taking in like the 10 to like 20 slot at quarterback position, like Geno Smith. Was he a first round draft pick, Geno Smith? I think he was, right?
I think he was early second round, but that year the first round QB taken was EJ Manuel, and he was also not very good.
Yeah, that's bad. Buffalo took him, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Every draft, it has like 1 or 2 first rounders that just like, yeah, like somebody messed up when they were doing their homework. Either that or it just was not a good fit. Like, you know, the Bears
with Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, and to be fair to Trubisky is not like a terrible quarterback. He actually has had 2 playoff appearances. But when you look at the guys taken after him, Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, who's in a bit of trouble now. But, you know, like, that's what makes it a bad pick in retrospect, because it's like you could have had these guys and instead you got Trubisky. So Yeah, I mean, Josh Rosen to Arizona in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, Lamar Jackson went last right in the first round, 32nd to the
yeah.
Ravens, and he's a good player.
Turned out to be the best, or at worst, the second best QB for that
Josh
draft.
Allen's probably the best now, right?
Yeah.
Lamar's probably. I mean, Baker. You could make a case though. Baker had a very good season. Like, I mean, this 2018 draft is very interesting because, like, the quarterbacks, if you look at it, like every year there's like a different guy who kind of emerges the best. Like, probably the first year I'd say Mayfield was the best. 2018, 2019, Lamar wins MVP. But last year, Allen was terrific. Like, he really improved. Like,
the draft generally needs about 3 years afterwards for people to actually make like a conclusion. Like, I think the jury's still out on a lot of the 2020 guys because like Tua on Miami
was 2019, right? Like a guy like Daniel Jones on the Giants. Like, this is going to be a big.
I mean, he has showed flashes of potential. Kyler Murray is good, but still hasn't made the playoffs. So hopefully he'll have a good roster next year, but also a very tough division. 2019, we can safely say that Dwayne Haskins did not perform to expectations, but he did get himself a job with the Steelers. So who knows? Maybe he'll be Roethlisberger's backup. But generally, you need a little bit of time. Like, I remember 2012, RG3 was taken number 2 overall. RG3 won Rookie of the Year over Andrew Luck and Russell Wilson. But when you look back at it now, if you're looking at the 2012 QBs, who would you take number 1? Would you
Russell
take
Wilson? Yep.
Yeah. And maybe Luck number 2, although Luck retired.
No, I would say this though, like Luck was probably like really, really good. It's just we forget about it just because he like had such a short career. Like Luck at his peak, I would say was like almost as good as Wilson like now. Like,
just couldn't beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
He was unable to beat the Patriots.
Yeah, Luck and Wilson, right? Both of them couldn't beat the Patriots in the playoffs.
Well, Wilson won. He won a regular season game. He won it twice.
Oh, 2, right? Well, 3 times, right? Yeah, 2012, 16, and 20. But I guess he'd trade all of those for that Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, if he handed the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, could be a different story.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, no, I think it's like a very interesting question, but I guess, yeah, so that's the Patriots situation. Like, obviously, like, it's hard for us to really predict anything. Bill Belichick is as, like, tight-lipped as you can be for, like, giving out, like, tipping his hand in either direction where he's going to go. But I guess I just wanted to ask you guys a couple general questions. So, obviously, Trevor Lawrence and Wilson, we've already discussed 1 and 2 overall to Jacksonville and New York, the Jets. Where do you see, so I guess Trey Lance, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields, what are your picks for, like, where these 3 end up?
I'm going with Fields to the Bengals and Jones to the Dolphins.
So you have Cincinnati taking another quarterback?
Yeah. Why not?
Interesting. Okay. I mean, so Fields to Cincinnati, and then who else? Where's Jones going?
Dolphins.
Jones is going to the Dolphins. Okay, that makes I can see that. And Trey Lance.
Trey Lance, that's a tricky one. That is a tricky one. Originally, I would have said the Niners, but given the situation with Jimmy G, I don't think so anymore. I actually don't know about that one. That one's a trickier thing to predict.
Okay. What about you, Pratik? Who are you? What are your picks for those 3?
You know, full pick. I'm gonna go Patriots.
Okay. Trey Lance
15th round, whatever. It sounds 15th crazy,
overall. Okay, yeah.
I can give you either what I want to happen or what I think will happen.
All right, do both. We'll see. Let's hear what you want first.
What I want to happen is number 3, San Francisco takes Justin Fields.
Okay.
Then number 9, Denver takes Trey Lance, and number 15, the Patriots take Mac Jones. That's what I want, but we don't always get what we want. What I think will happen is at 3, the Niners will take Mac Jones because for some reason Kyle Shanahan seems to love him, unless it's like smoke and mirrors and they like somebody else actually. I think then Trey Lance is going to go to the Falcons at 4, which is also kind of a change up, but I think they're also starting to think about life after Matt Ryan. He won an MVP, took them to the Super Bowl, and he is under contract a couple more years. But Trey Lance is also the perfect guy to sit for a couple years and learn. Mahomes sat for 1 year behind Alex Smith. Give Trey Lance 2 years behind Matt Ryan, and yeah, maybe he'll be a stud. He'll have weapons to throw to for sure, Calvin Ridley and all. And then Fields will go to Denver at 9. I'm wary of Denver at 9. I'm pretty sure they're going to take a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy Drew Lock. I mean, I'm reading some of the hype, but I think they're kind of just not really that over. I don't know. I mean, he didn't really impress me last year, like Drew.
Yeah,
Lock.
Because Denver has a strong roster besides the QB position. They have a lot of good young receivers, Jerry Jeudy, and they've got
Sutton. And they have
Melvin
Courtland
Gordon.
Sutton and Melvin Gordon. Yep. And
Yeah.
I guess Philip Lindsay's gone. He went to Houston.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have Melvin Gordon. Yeah, they have a good team.
So the quarterback position is like the weak link for them. I mean, much like it is for the Patriots in several ways. It's like if you can upgrade a QB. So yeah, that's why I'm confident Denver's going to take a QB. So Denver, they'll get their pick, I guess. But they'll get and I like Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is good, but I think maybe he's a little bit overrated because I mean, just he played at Ohio State. They didn't have a whole lot of competition. They played Northwestern in the Big Ten championship, and they scored I think a total of 12 points. Like you can't do that. Like you can't have a 12-point game against Northwestern. Nothing against Northwestern. They're a great academic institution, but like that's just yeah. And he did have a good game against Clemson in the college semifinals.
Got injured there too, right? So he was kind of hurt for that final.
Yeah, no, he played extremely well. And if he had played well against Alabama after that, I would say like he could actually be the best QB in the draft class. But he kind of regressed. He was lights out against Clemson, though. I'll give him that. That was he thoroughly outplayed Trevor Lawrence, and everybody has loved Trevor Lawrence for like the last 3 years, and there was like a smidgen of doubt after that game. Like, is Trevor Lawrence really the best QB?
No, I'm actually going to ask you this. Like, do you actually think Lawrence is going to turn out to be the best QB in this draft? Because like he's going to go number one. Like I don't know. Like I just like there's something about Lawrence. Like I've seen him play like really good. It was 18, right? 2019 final. Played in 2019 final. He played Alabama, right? He scorched them. It was like his freshman year. But then like the last 2 years, yeah. And like I think like I don't know, there's something about Lawrence, and maybe it's just the Jacksonville situation he's going into. Like I have some doubts that he's gonna really like find a way to really thrive in Jacksonville. Like I know Urban Meyer's there, but I don't know. Like I think like,
he's gonna be fine. He's gonna be fine. The only situation where what you're saying is gonna come true is if this turns out to be another Johnny Manziel kind of bust.
Ooh,
no. I mean, Lawrence doesn't have the off the field issues that Manziel had. Like everybody knew Manziel was.
That's what I said. I'm saying that it would take something like that for Trevor Lawrence not to be a good pick.
I mean, I'm just looking at Jacksonville's recent QB trends. Like they took Gabbard, and then who else did they have? They had
Bortles.
Oh yeah, Bortles. I mean, they're just I don't know if I trust them to like. I mean, obviously Lawrence is kind of like everyone's saying he's going to be great, but like Gabbard, Bortles. Who else? Then they drafted Minshew's actually solid, and if Minshew's available, I'd like the Patriots to take him, like at least trade for him. He's cheap and he's actually pretty good. Like I actually think he's good.
Yeah, if they don't draft a stud, then Minshew would be good. I think they can get something out of him. But yeah, I think for Lawrence, Lawrence absolutely, he's like talented. He's lost like a grand total of 2 games since high school, and they were both in the college football playoffs. One time against LSU and Joe Burrow, and the other time against Ohio State. Where Fields played light out.
Oh, he's about to lose a lot of games in Jacksonville year one.
Yeah, he's probably gonna match that 2-loss thing by week 3. He's gonna. I haven't even seen the schedule, but yeah, he's gonna be like, oh, I lost 2 games in the last 5 years. All right, well here's 2 more in 2 weeks. So yeah, it'll be a learning curve. I don't expect him to be. I was really astounded last year by Justin Herbert having he threw 31 touchdown passes as a rookie.
He was good.
Like he was really good. And he didn't face a whole lot of stiff competition in college because he went to Oregon, and Pac-12 is not like an amazing conference. So yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give Lawrence the benefit of the doubt. I don't think he's gonna be the best right away though, because a lot of it depends on where a player is picked.
And the Jaguars' offensive line, I have no idea how that is. But yeah. I mean, they're just a very bad. They have a very their roster needs a lot of work right now. So yeah, no, I agree. So I guess I guess if you have to ask me, I'd say Jones. I think Jones to San Francisco 3. I think the Patriots. I don't know. I don't think they're going to trade. So I don't think they're going to get either of these guys unless I think Fields likely is the most likely to drop to 15 because I have seen mock drafts where he goes to 15. So
he'll be near.
But I'll say I'm gonna say Lance to Denver. I'll give Lance to Denver, and then I don't know. I think Fields. I'm gonna say Justin Fields to the Patriots at 15. I think they are really interested in Fields, and I think Fields is gonna drop. It's really interesting about Fields because if you remember at the start of the college football season, it was Lawrence 1, Fields 2. Fields was the second guy. Then Wilson kind of usurped him for the second spot. So I don't know. I'm kind of intrigued by Fields. Like, I mean, I know the Ohio State factor is there, but really, I mean, Haskins, obviously, that was like he had some other issues. I don't think Fields has that type of like baggage that Haskins out of college had. Like Haskins, even his rookie year, like I remember like he did stuff like he took a selfie with a fan instead of like being there for like the final huddle, like stuff like that. Then obviously he did
after his first win. Yeah, after his first win.
Yeah. He did some pretty bad stuff last year too, like with I don't know, with the whole like I think he was like he did some. I don't want to like throw stuff out there just in case I misquoted it, but there was some stuff he did last year which probably he shouldn't have been doing, and he got released. So I don't know. I do think like Fields is different, and there was also an interesting point. I was listening to the Zolak and Bertrand show on. If you look at Ohio State quarterbacks, how many of these guys like who came out of the draft though, like did we actually have expectations for? Like obviously, like I mean, there are other guys. Like I mean, that's that guy Cardell Jones, right? But there was no expectation for Cardell Jones out of college.
He was in the XFL for the Washington Defenders.
But he wasn't like considered like nobody really considered him like a star prospect in college, right? Like I mean, people just sort of viewed him as just like the Ohio State quarterback. Fields is like generally viewed. So like I think him, Haskins, if you really look at like back, like, I think those are kind of like the recent guys from Ohio State we've had expectations for. So I don't know if we should lump Fields with just because like other Ohio State quarterbacks haven't worked out before. I don't think we should just sort of like write him off yet. Like I do see what you're saying. Like obviously there's the wariness, but I think I'm willing to give Fields a chance, and I do like what I've seen from him. Like I think he has like the intangible to succeed, and like I like the way like he's a mobile quarterback too. He can run and he can throw, so I'd give him a chance. And like I think you give him the offense the Patriots have. Like he has Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith as his tight ends. Like that's as good a situation as you can get into for like a pro quarterback. Then you have guys who can catch the ball in Myers, Aguilar, and Bourne. And maybe we see something from N'Keal Harry year 3. So yeah.
Do you think Fields is a week 1 starter though?
So actually, I think going back to what you're saying, Pratik, I actually think that I think I'd be okay if Cam kind of starts the season off. And I think it kind of goes like, let's just say like they start 4-0 with Cam, right? And then all of a sudden, you gotta ride the hot hand. But if you go like if you're like 2-3 or something like that, like after 5 games or you're like 1-3, then I think you gotta go with Fields. So I think Fields can start off on the bench, and you really see, and maybe like I think that's actually a good thing if you give Cam some pressure. Last year there was no pressure at all because even when he played horribly, he knew he was going to still be the starter the next week.
He was anointed the starter when he didn't really deserve it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, in this case, yeah, I think that's a great strategy, having somebody to push him, because he knows like if I don't perform great, this guy's gonna get my job.
So. Yeah, and exactly like last year with Stidham, it's like the thing, right? Like when you see the team draft a quarterback in the first round, that's basically their message of saying we see this guy's the future. So if you don't perform, we are going to go with this guy for sure. It's not like Stidham. Stidham was kind of just like sort of there, but like this is a first round draft.
Yeah, he was never really. I guess they were never seriously considering making Stidham the starter, because they really should have done that when they were like 6-7 or 6-8. Just throw him in there. But yeah, I don't know what that was about. There was one situation last year that was kind of strange where Miami had a winning record with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but then they benched him anyway for Tua. And they ended up missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you always think like, what if? Like, what if they rolled with Fitz, and what if they went 11-5? Like that's what I don't want to happen. Like you said, the hot hand, that's important in football, like, or in any sport. Like, yeah, if Cam starts off 3-1, 4-1, like, just kind of keep it going. But obviously, I think it's important for the guy to learn, whoever they draft. And it's been a long time since Josh McDaniels has had to develop a quarterback, like from the beginning, really. Like, I mean, maybe they did with Garoppolo.
Castle probably a little bit, like in 2008. Maybe
yeah, he was also kind of thrown into the fire when Brady got hurt in week 1. But yeah, this is a new challenge. I mean, I believe the Patriots are up to it, but like before last season, they had no inkling they would really need to do this because they had the GOAT. But now it's like really, yeah, you need to show your coaching wizardry and get these guys out there.
I totally agree. And I guess like with regards to the 49ers, we keep mentioning San Francisco. I think it's just because of Jimmy Garoppolo. Do you think there is a possibility that Jimmy Garoppolo is traded to the Patriots during draft week?
Nah.
That would sound like a storybook, too good to be true. I mean, he already has 2 Super Bowl rings with the Patriots. Might want to add to his collection. But
And he probably could have had a third if he had just held on to that lead against the Chiefs, right?
yeah, no, I mean he's definitely. I am a little confused why the Niners are looking to move on from him, because the one season where he played the full season, they made the Super Bowl. So like, I'm a little confused why.
So I think I can give a little more insight. So I think like what's happened with Jimmy G is like, yeah, like, I mean, obviously, like if you just sort of like look at the overall thing, like you see a Super Bowl season, and like he was good, but like in the playoffs, the run game was huge. Like against Green Bay in that NFC Championship game, he only threw 8 passes, and the 49ers scored 37 points. Raheem Mostert was the star of that game. I think he had
Go to
over
Ryan
200 rushing
Tannehill.
yards,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and then basically, I think against Minnesota the week before, it was like 27-10, and he actually threw an interception. The run game basically kind of carried. There was the defense in the run game, and that's basically like in the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl, he actually they did make some nice plays, but I mean, when it really came down in crunch time to holding that lead, he blew it late. And like I think that's sort of like what's like kind of been going on with him. Like he's like I think he's a solid quarterback. I think he's like a game manager at best. Like he's not like the type of guy like you want to really like. He's kind of like an Alex Smith in
So
a
in that
way.
case,
Like,
do we want him on the Patriots? Like,
wait,
I
what,
mean,
wait, why do I want him? Or
well, yeah, would we want him? Because I mean,
oh.
if his ceiling is really that, being a game manager, like, I don't know.
I don't personally really want him, honestly. I don't think he's like anything special. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I honestly, like after the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, that kind of turned me off completely on him. Because then I just saw someone who's like, you're given a lead, and then all you have to do is just manage the clock at that point, and he couldn't even do that. Like, I mean, I know it's like different, but like Brady, 1 year later, he has a lead against Kansas City. He actually does like everything properly. They actually run the ball, and he doesn't like throw it late. Like, I just felt like there's just something about like that whole thing that just really rubbed me the wrong way on Jimmy Garoppolo. I know it's just one game, it's the Super Bowl, but like I just don't think he's like really like the type of guy who's gonna like take you the distance to like a championship, and that's really what I want, right? Like that's why I'm okay with them not signing a guy like Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston, because those are not guys who are going to help this team win a Super Bowl. Like that's what I'm really in for. Like so, Cam is okay as a backup as long as you actually bring someone in to really challenge him and basically maybe you can learn from him. He's an MVP after all, and there are like professional qualities you can learn from Cam, like someone who's been at the top before and been to a Super Bowl.
I will say this about Cam: he is beloved in the locker room. Like everybody really likes him. I mean, like N'Keal Harry, like everyone, they just like he is just like the ultimate teammate, and that's important to have for morale. Last year was weird because it was like a COVID year and they had to socially distance and you hang out in small pods. But like in a normal situation, like he's the guy, he'll get them pumped. He'll like, and I think that's important for a team to have that. And if he
Yep.
does become a backup, he needs to keep that because actually in Miami last year, I'm going back to them. They all loved Fitzpatrick. Like he was even when Tua was starting, Fitz would hype them all up. He would wear short shorts to practice in a tribute to Isaiah Ford, who they traded away.
The
So
Patriots, right? Wasn't he to the
yeah,
Patriots?
he was traded to the Patriots. Yeah, so like, I mean, those are important. Like morale, leadership.
My
Because
thing
you,
with Fitz is like, see, the thing is like Cam's like an MVP, like he's an accomplished player. Like Fitzpatrick, like all due respect to him, he's like a career backup who sort of like gets starts every now and then. So it's like a different vibe, right? Fitzpatrick's kind of used to this whole like, oh, like some guy comes in and is better than me. But Cam, like being the number 1 overall pick, he was Superman. He was like a superstar in this league for a period of time. Like, do you think his ego would let him be a backup? Like the way Fitzpatrick, it's like a different situation. I see what you're trying to say, but like Fitzpatrick is like, that's kind of like what he's sort of used to, right? Like he's used to some guy like being better than him. For Cam though, that's not something like he's used to, because for so many years he was the star. Like he was the guy. He's not the guy who's holding the clipboard there for morale or like rallying the team, right? Like that's like, I'm just trying to say that's like kind of a difference. So I don't know if Cam can really like sort of be that type of like bench type of guy. Like I don't know if his ego will allow that, like to do that. Like do you think like that could be a problem if he is like the backup and like he gets relegated to the bench?
I mean, I think at this point in his career, like basically the results kind of speak for themselves. The last few years, like he has not been really at his 2015 MVP level. I think he just needs to kind of adopt the mentality that he'll do whatever the team needs him to do. Like if they want him to go out there and play and start, that'll be great. But otherwise serve as a mentor. I mean, yes, the like ego, I can't really speak for him, but I would think that like
That's got to be gone by now. Come on.
yeah,
Given last year, that's got to be gone by now.
exactly. Like I think like I was personally surprised. I think you guys were too when they gave him another year.
I
But
was very surprised.
exactly, like I think like I think they like him. They like him as a person. I don't know if they like him as a starting quarterback, but could turn out that they do. But yeah, his contract is like incentive loaded, so he needs to actually like play and hit certain milestones to get the full amount of money,
including winning Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm fine with them having him. I'm even fine with him being the week 1 starter because let's see how he does with some weapons, with a Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith. Like, yeah, maybe and having a full off season because last year there was not much of an off season with the whole virtual Zoom.
And I will also say this: prior to him getting COVID, the Patriots were 2-1, and they had beaten Miami, who was a pretty good team, Vegas, who besides Tampa was the one team that could actually give.
They scored at least 30 points.
And they also beat Kansas City in the regular season. Besides Tampa, that was like the next most impressive performance of the season. They beat Kansas City for really their only real loss in the regular season. Obviously, Tampa beat them in the Super Bowl. So Vegas was a real team. And then you're 2-1, and don't forget, like they got stopped at the goal line in Seattle. That was a tough one. But I mean, you're basically 2 yards away from being 3-0, and then you're playing Kansas City, and then Cam gets COVID, the season goes downhill. So maybe I think that is like the one thing that maybe the Patriots looked at, like seeing like, okay, like last year, like we were trending in the right direction, and then he gets COVID, we lose 4 in a row, and then they're not the same team. They were 2-5, and they did kind of rally back, but by then it seemed like kind of the wind had been knocked out of them. You got
that's
back to 6.
That's assuming that this season is going to be different, and that the COVID situation with Cam is what caused all of that. It was a factor. We don't know how big of a factor it was.
Well, I mean, I think definitely right. Like, I mean, the first game, like, so they the Kansas City game, they lose without, they had Hoyer, and they probably could have honestly made that game competitive if Hoyer doesn't fumble that ball and take that sack. I mean, that game, like, it was like 26-10, and then Denver, he comes back. I think he's a free agent, I think.
so nobody wants him.
Yeah, I mean, I think like he's like the type of guy who can be like a coach, actually. Like, I think he has like a good, like he's like a good guy, but not a good quarterback. But I mean, if you remember, like the Denver, they scored 12 points. They should have won that game against Denver. Like a good quarterback.
4 field goals. That was the Nick Folk.
Yep. And 6 field goals for Denver, actually. It was like 6-4, basically McManus versus Nick Folk. Yeah. And then after that, what was it? Like they that San Francisco game was horrible. And then Buffalo, that was the tough one because Cam actually, I think that's probably when he like kind of regained his mojo. Because Buffalo, they were actually driving, and then he fumbles that ball late, and they lost that game by 3. And then I don't know, like it just seemed like different. Like the good win against the Jets. I mean, it's not really, can't say good win, but they had a win against the Jets.
They should have beat the Texans. That one kind of felt like the nail in the coffin.
Even then, like Arizona, like there were some games later on, they beat Arizona, but he was bad against Arizona. I think he had like 84 yards. He threw 2 picks. And don't forget, if Zane Gonzalez, the Arizona kicker, doesn't miss that field goal, we're probably looking at like another loss for that team. Like it would have been a 6-10 season. So
yeah,
I don't know, like
the game in spite of him.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I don't know. I just saw like later on. Then of course we beat the Jets week 17. That doesn't count.
Destroyed the Chargers somehow. 45-0.
Yeah, I mean that was more of the defense. I feel on the special teams because they had like a kick return for a touchdown. They had like all sorts of like they had a punt return for a touchdown. Cam did, I guess, do something on the ground that day, but yeah, I don't know. Like I'm just not really. We'll see. I mean, maybe that's sort of the logic for what to expect from Cam this season. Like I'm not feeling great about the perspectives right now. Even if it's a rookie quarterback, I don't see a Super Bowl. Like usually rookie quarterbacks never lead their team to Super Bowls, right? Like Brady's probably
the best. Like
Brady was second year, right? Like first year starter is different, but second, like first year in the league is a little different from like leading up to the Super Bowl. Yeah, no, that's kind of the thing. I guess the last question, this is kind of a fun question. Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle? This is probably going to be like one of those debates.
Both are good. Both are good, but I got to go with Devontae Smith on this. Simply the fact, I mean, he's been with Alabama. He played 13 games, and he has a longer track record.
Well, that's part of the question. I'm saying, which player do you think will have the better rookie season, and which player will have the better career? Just like a pure, like hypothetical. I just want to sort of play around.
Better career, all bets are off, because that's like several years in the future.
Just make a guess. Just make a guess at this point. That's all I'm looking for.
No, I'm going to go contrarian. I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle. I'm going to go with that. Maybe contrarian on this one.
Okay, Pratik, what do you think?
I mean, like I said, for like a lot of it depends where they end up and who is the quarterback throwing to them. However, I will say Devontae Smith, he absolutely deserved the Heisman Trophy. And if you look at his numbers in the national championship, he played a half, and he had over 200 receiving yards in a half. Like, it is extremely rare for a quarterback to have 200 passing yards in a half. This is a receiver, like just like
Tyreek Hill. Remember Tyreek Hill in the regular season against Tampa?
Yeah, exactly. What he did to the Bucks. Yeah, and this is against Ohio State, which supposedly they're a good team. They made the national title game. I'm probably annoying if there's any listeners here who like Ohio State, but like I'm not really a huge fan of Ohio State or the Big Ten in general. But yeah, Devonta Smith, he torched them, and yeah, I mean, I hope he ends up somewhere with a good quarterback. And if that's New England, if he's available at 15, if he's available, and then the defensive players we mentioned earlier are also available, I would lean Devonta Smith, because I think really this offense, they need every weapon available. The defense will be fine. The defense, I believe Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia even. So yeah, I would.
Let me just ask you this then, Pratik. Like if like Fields is available at 15 and so is like a guy like Smith, do you go with Smith then at 15?
That is a great question, actually. It's like it comes down to like the positional need. Everybody says quarterback's the most important position in football, but if you have like a once in a generation receiver, which I'm not saying Devonta Smith is really, like, because it's hard to tell. Like there's a lot of great receivers in the NFL, but I would probably in that case lean Fields if he's available. Just because like in football, like unlike some other sports, like all positions aren't necessarily created equal. Like having a stud quarterback is much more important than having a stud receiver. Like remember when the Lions had Calvin Johnson all those years?
They went 0-16 with him still.
Exactly. Like he was probably the best receiver in the game at the time, but it didn't matter. They didn't win anything. Then they
even look at a guy like Christian McCaffrey on Carolina. You could say he's the best running back, but the Panthers are terrible, even though they have him.
Whereas
like
on the other hand, if a team has the best quarterback, most likely they're at least making the playoffs.
Mahomes, like you're making the
exactly. Yeah, like I mean, yeah, Mahomes, Brady, Aaron Rodgers did miss a couple times, I think, but like for the most part, if you're set at quarterback, you're set. If you're set at receiver, you still got to take care of everything else.
Oh, I agree. So yeah, I'd say like the only way I'd be okay with them taking a guy like Smith or someone else at 15 is if they take a guy like Mond or someone at round 2. Like, I mean, they need a quarterback like at this point. Like Cam, like I'm not like they can't do this whole QB carousel thing. That's the thing we laughed at other teams for doing before, right? Like all these years, like we'd laugh at them, like, oh look, they're spending another draft pick at a quarterback. The Patriots are now in that
Cleveland Browns before they drafted Baker Mayfield, it was like every season they would have
Brandon Whedon, right? Like I mean, so many guys
they had RG3, like all these guys, Cody Kessler, like just like it's like a revolving door, and like where are they now? Like none of them are. So yeah, the Patriots absolutely should not do that. That's why they just need to be smart with talent evaluation and start Cam if need be while you develop somebody. But yeah, that would be the worst.
And I'm just going to make my pick quick. I'm going to go with, I think, Jalen Waddle. I think he'll have the better rookie season. But I think long term, I'm just going to go with Devonta Smith. I think he's going to be.
What do you like about Waddle?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I think honestly, like these, like when I was reading the scouting reports, I feel like all of them are kind of just like they're very similar. Like they're both like all like one of the things that kind of stood out to me when I was reading about this guy and then these two and then also Jamar Chase. All three of these guys, like one of the characteristics I got was any reception they get, they can score. And that's like actually like I mean when you read that, that's like very like kind of like that's like wow. Like so they catch it on like the 30 and they're able to just go in for a touchdown. Like that's huge. So I think like Waddle, like I mean, based on what I was reading, like he's very fast, threat to score on any reception, deep threat, stretches the field. And really the only con that like I was reading the Walter, like it's like the Walter football, they have like a scouting report. Really the only con I could see was that he's undersized. And that's like why I don't even know if that's really like a real con. Like after seeing a guy like Antonio Brown, Julian Edelman to a lesser extent, like smaller guys thrive. So I think Waddle, like I mean, deep threat, like I don't know, like I don't want to like say he's like a Randy Moss because Randy Moss was huge and Randy Moss is one of the best ever. So, but I mean the deep threat and threat to score in any reception. I don't know. This seems like something I like about Waddle. So I think he's going to be like whoever gets him is going to get an absolute stud. And if he can stay healthy, I'd see him being an absolute beast. So yeah, but I don't know. I honestly like, at this point, who knows, right? Like I mean, really like all these guys, like their stats are going to be impressive out of college. So I don't know, like N'Keal Harry, for example, his stats were great at Arizona State and he looks like a massive bust for the Patriots.
Right. The draft is absolutely like nobody has the answers. And the Patriots have made bad picks at a receiver before. I mean,
they made very bad picks. Like Julian Edelman is really like their one last good wide receiver pick. And that was like
a late round, right? Like Like he
But
was.
Malcolm Mitchell, I mean, to be fair, Malcolm Mitchell was a 4th-round draft pick, and he was big against them in the Super Bowl 51 against the Falcons. But then he got injured, and he wasn't the same. So it's not like, I mean, they've tried, but I mean, recently, like their best, I guess, draft pick, it's not even a draft pick, it's Jacoby Myers, an undrafted free agent. They got him in 2019, and he's been better than N'Keal Harry. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's why I'm kind of worried about the wide receiver. Like if Belichick has to pick one, because he hasn't done a good job at all. But I mean, I do trust him in the offensive line, and I do trust him with the defense, just as long as it's not like a secondary guy, because he's horrible at drafting secondary players like round 1 or 2. Like he's drafted Cyrus Jones, Jordan Richards, some of these many guys. Do you remember that guy Razai Dowling? They took him in 2011. So
Yep.
some of these guys they've picked who were busts at the position. But I mean, of course, McCourty is there, so we'll see what happens. I mean, so yeah. But anyways, like that's our take for the Patriots. Obviously, the draft is going to be April 29th, and let's hope the Patriots can take a quarterback. If not April 29th, the Thursday, maybe the Friday, round 2 or 3. But really, I think that
the fallout's going to be a topic on next week's show. That's for sure.
By the weekend, they should definitely have at least another quarterback on the roster. Yeah, but I think just to go back briefly to your previous question about Jimmy Garoppolo, I think it sounds good. It sounds like a nice story, like because he started off in New England and then he comes back. But I don't really think that's the direction that they're gonna go in. And I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong.
I mean, when you read, like, I mean, the thing is, like, I mean, I was listening to Zolak and Bertrand, and I keep referencing them. But Scott Zolak, he's a Patriots color commentator, and he has a lot of Patriots connections. Like, he's a former Patriots player. He has like he has like and he also has like weekly like interviews with Bill Belichick. So this guy, like, he has connections with, like, he has like these weekly like game film like breakdown with Bill Belichick. So this guy knows the Patriots like better than a lot of us would do, just because like we're just fans on the outside. Like he knows this team, and he seems like one thing he said that kind of stood out was if they don't take a quarterback in this draft, that means there's a deal in place to bring Garoppolo back. So just something to keep in mind going forward. I don't know if this is going to happen, but I guess if you don't take a quarterback.
So last year the Patriots didn't take a quarterback in the draft at all. So at the time they had Jarrett Stidham.
And they really, if you remember last year, they really hyped up Stidham to being that guy. Like if you remember, like they were like, "Oh, this is the guy for sure." And like if you remember, do you remember like how much they painted this guy to be like the #1 like future star? Like they did all that. Then they signed Cam in June, and all of that just goes.
Which is like kind of a dead period for NFL free agency, because like it's before training camp starts, but it's like after the draft, and like all of a sudden, random end of June, you get the notification Patriots bringing Cam. So makes me wonder, did they realize something about Stidham in June?
I think what happened, I mean, it's hard, right? Because at the time, if I remember, like it was like at that time, like COVID was like it was a lot stricter regulation and stuff like that. And if I remember correctly, wasn't that when like it was just mainly like Zoom stuff? Like there wasn't really much on the field stuff going on. So
yeah, they had Zoom OTAs.
But I guess the one thing that may have like ticked them off from what I heard was like Stidham attended a wedding in Texas or something like that. And there's like this is like actually like he attended a wedding, and that apparently like ticked off the Patriots enough to, I guess, I mean, not start him at all. They really, I don't know, like there were times I kind of wondered like why aren't they bringing this guy in? Because like I mean, I don't know, like it was just stretches, right? But against the Chargers, he throws a touchdown. Against Kansas City, like he threw a touchdown like after like Hoyer got benched. He actually threw a touchdown, making it like 13-10. And I mean, I thought like honestly, like if you gave him like a full week to kind of start properly, I'd rather see like what he had, but clearly they don't see this guy's the answer. Because
I was surprised they started Hoyer in that game, because like when Cam got COVID, they started Hoyer. But if you're truly looking to the future, or like you want to see if you have QB of the future, that's the situation. And I know it's the Chiefs, so like maybe they thought they'd get blown out, but I don't know. There's times when I've kind of questioned the decision making in the last year or so. But
yeah, I think all of us have. So I mean, I don't know. It's different, right? Like all these years, we just sort of took it as it is. Like even if it was like not a great decision, it was like, oh, they're still like 12-4, 13-3. But now, like it's different when you're 7-9 and you're no longer like you're missing the playoffs. Then you're like, why are they doing this? Like it's clearly not working, right? Like before, you could be like, oh, well, whatever, like 13-3, 12-4, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I totally agree. So. Yeah, I'm really hoping they take a quarterback. Like if, as I said, like next week when we do the show, hopefully they've taken a quarterback by then. Otherwise, we're sort of going to be wondering and scratching our heads on as to how is this 2021 season going to defer?
We'll have to see whether Zolak was right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, Zolak, I bring him up just because I think like he has like inside connections. Like, so like I feel like anything he says, at least I usually kind of tune in, especially when he talks about football, because anything he says about like their like interests are stuff that. But I mean, to be fair, and I'm going to mention this as something he was very wrong in. The day the Patriots brought back Trent Brown, traded with the Las Vegas Raiders, Zolak was so convinced that this meant they weren't bringing back Cam Newton. Like he even started like celebrating that day, and of course, we all know how that worked. So just take that as you will. So, I mean, just because he says it doesn't mean it's going to be correct. So, but yeah, no, this was a great, guys. Any last takes for the Patriots? Any words of advice or words of caution to the Patriots before they undergo? I'm not gonna mince words. This is gonna be the most important draft for this franchise. Probably, I don't even know. This is the most important since I've been a fan of this team since 2005, like a full-time like fan. This is the most important draft I can remember the Patriots going into. Like, and I mean this. Like, I mean, 2010, you could argue maybe like it was kind of like 2009 was a down year, like 10-6. But this is the most important draft I can remember because they don't have the quarterback.
10-6 is a down year. That's when you know you've got a great team. Like, yeah,
this is the most important draft since I've been a fan of this team for like 16 seasons now. So this is like a big draft. Like they can't screw this up again. So like, what do you guys like? I don't know. Any final words?
I would say, I mean, last year with COVID. Sorry, Rohan. Rohan, do you want to say?
Yeah, I say like go for the QB. I know that's not what the Patriots want to do. That's not what the management wants to do. But they need a plan. And Cam's not going to cut it. Go for the QB. You've already built the team around the QB. Now go for the QB itself. But anyway, go ahead, Pratik.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that like basically this draft is extremely important, and last year was a strange season with COVID, and I mean COVID is still out there, but like last year everything was disrupted. So I am willing to give Belichick a pass for last season for what happened in 2020, but if they continue to be mediocre, if they roll with Cam Newton and they go 7-10 or 8-9 because there's 17 games now, then like yeah, I would have to say they've kind of lost their way without Brady. Like they've just without like you need to have a quarterback who you can depend on, and they need to do something. So
okay,
very important week ahead.
Yep. And last question, I just remembered you brought a very important point. If the Patriots miss the playoffs again, is Bill Belichick in trouble as the coach? Like, is his job security no longer
Normally, yes, but considering the kind of relationship that he has with Kraft, I'd say probably not.
I think it depends. Like if they go like 4-12 or something horrible, I could see him potentially. I don't think he'll be let go again after another down season. I think it depends on what happens. But
I don't think Kraft is going to turn on Belichick. I just don't think that's going to happen.
I still think he's a great coach. So I think he needs to, but he definitely has something to prove now, especially after seeing Tom Brady win the Super Bowl without him. But Pratik, what do you think on that? Do you think Belichick's on the hot seat with another down season in 2021?
I don't think they're ever gonna fire him really. But yeah, I mean, definitely his legacy will have been tarnished a little bit because he is the greatest coach of all time. I think a lot of people agree on that. But yeah, like if they're mediocre consistently after losing Brady, it's not going to be a good look for his legacy. And he definitely cares about his legacy. He's chasing the all-time wins.
Don Shula, yep.
Like he's going to say he doesn't care. Like he's never going to admit that he cares, but he cares.
He's the ultimate competitor. His boat is named 8 rings. So
Absolutely.
yeah, he definitely cares. But yeah, no, Pratik, thank you so much for coming on. Rohan, and obviously we'll see. Pratik, we'll hope to have you again back at some point this summer.
No,
yeah, always good to have you on, man.
Yeah, I greatly enjoy definitely listening to the podcast, and yeah, I mean hearing this is where I go for my New England sports news and soccer sometimes.
We're flattered, man. We are flattered. No, this is such. But yeah, no. To all our listeners, you can follow us at the CV Update podcast.
Hey, dude. Hey, dude. We're the CV Update. If you join, we'll definitely become the CVS.
All right.
And then we can get sued by
issues.
and then we can get sued by the pharmacy chain. So that's gonna be good stuff.
All right. CVS, do not worry. That will not be the name we go with if that ever happens. So just dispelling that. But yeah, no. To all our listeners, follow us on Instagram. You can follow us on YouTube. Smash that like button. And we will be back again next week to discuss what went on in the draft, for better or for worse. But until then, have a good night. And please stay safe, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
All
Have
right,
a good one.
peace.
Yep.